thing.
There's the Dr. Stutz and his testimony about the bear hug.
So can we talk about that for a second? Because
Sure.
that makes absolutely no sense. So I talked to a couple people like you did, people I knew who could dive, and it takes like a tank to turn it all the way off and then back on.
Yeah,
and
at least it does.
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing to do because it is under pressure. So it's not like your faucet, in your garden where you just reach, and it just turns. No, you've got to put some force into it. It would have taken him a good little bit to do that in a bear hug scenario.
Yeah, probably would have. Yeah.
So, I mean,
wouldn't also her computer have shown that?
You would think
if she had just stopped consuming air for a little while?
You would think it would have shown that, yeah.
Or I don't know how. Are you getting at would it have shown that the air going through the regulator was reduced? Is that what you're getting at, Devin?
Yeah, I guess. It would have shown like a decrease, right?
Well, I'm sure it did show a decrease because she stopped breathing, but I don't know that it would have been able to distinguish that decrease being because the valve was turning. I don't think it would record that kind of content.
No, it wouldn't. I don't think. And those things don't record everything. Especially this is 2003. It's hard to remember, but actually, storage was not as easy and tiny as it is today. It's amazing what we can get into a tiny little card these days.
Oh, yeah.
2003 was a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was different.
So, are there more suspicious things here?
Let's see. Well, we had the bear hug, and there was the fact that she became amazingly negatively buoyant all of a sudden, which, that's actually... There are some people that wondered if Gabe actually deliberately overweighted her.
I have another question about this, because I'm not a diver, and I think a lot of our listeners are not divers. So she put weights in her pockets, in her vest?
Of her vest, yeah.
And were those pockets... basically, the question is could they not have just unzipped the pocket and taken the weight out?
Yeah, well, I was asking Austin about that, and he said that it's when you're actually out there, it's kind of hard to do. When you got your tanks on and everything, it's kind of hard to get to those pockets.
But somebody else Gabe couldn't have done that for her?
Not if she was in a panic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, have you ever seen anybody get suited up to dive? If they need assistance, they're standing there and you're kind of arms a bit at your side and you're lumbering around and they are getting to everything and it is then hard to get at it yourself because remember she's in a wetsuit.
Right. No, I know.
So her hands are going to be covered.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. No, that was one of the things I was wondering too. Same thing was how easy is it to grab those weights and chuck them?
Apparently
and just
not.
Lighten yourself up a little bit.
It is easy if she had been wearing a weight belt.
Well, exactly.
If she had a belt, then because I've known people who've been underwater and was it a sea? He turned around and there was a seal, and he wasn't expecting it. It was like inches away from his face. It scared the holy crap out of him, and he just popped the belt and shot towards the surface because it just freaked him out.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been able to do that had he tucked them in if he had a vest on at the time.
Yeah.
So,
no, I know.
Again, depends on equipment.
It depends. It does. I know Wade Singleton actually dropped his belt that day when he had to get up off the floor with her. He dropped his belt.
Yeah.
So, but that's a different outfit.
Yep.
And I think Gabe did say something about not being able to. It would have been great if he could have. If she had been wearing a belt, he could have dropped the belt, and that would have helped things. But he wasn't able to do that.
Right.
And the next step after that is to chuck everything, which is problematical too, because then what you got to do is you got to go straight up to the surface, and that's got its issues.
Yeah, well, and if he dropped all of her equipment, they would have had to been in the buddy scenario, sharing a breather, the regulator, or if he had figured out where his original regulator was floating around him, then they could have both used them. But he apparently didn't have the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah, and it turns out he didn't find out till later when he was cleaning it that the mouthpiece had actually been knocked off of it.
Oh.
So it wasn't really usable anyway.
Got it.
Yeah, and don't know when exactly that happened. It might have been in the incident when it got knocked off his face and out of his mouth. Another thing that was really kind of suspicious was his claim that he was unable to dive fast enough to catch her.
Which we've talked about, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, from the prosecution's point of view, if you want to drown your wife, you wanted to spend some extra quality time at the bottom of the ocean drowning, well, that's what you want to do is let her sink and go and then just, come back later. And I still am not entirely able to make sense of his claim that he couldn't catch her. That does seem awfully strange.
Remember that he is used to swimming in freshwater?
Yeah.
And when you are in saltwater, your buoyancy goes up.
Yeah.
So he may have been used to swimming down and expecting to make a certain speed, and is not going as fast as he expects, so therefore is judging it and saying there's no way I'm going to get there.
Yeah. And
again, perception.
Yeah, and there's also another explanation, which I'll talk about in one of my other theories.
Okay.
But another thing that was suspicious is his slow ascent. After he left her, it took him like 3 minutes to get topside. I think almost 3 minutes, although it's hard to say when they were using his dive computer, and the dive computer goes in 1 minute increments, and so it could have been like
just barely over 2.
It could have been 2 minutes 5 seconds, something like that. Yeah, it does. It does look like from the ascent, it does look like he made a fairly rapid ascent. Again, you'd think in a panic situation like that, he would have just thrown all caution to the winds and just zipped up to the surface as ASAP.
I guess, yeah. I don't know how recently he had taken the rescue class, but
it wasn't recent.
Okay, well, I know that on land first aid thing, the number one thing they drill into you is like you have to put yourself first. You have to put yourself first. You have to make sure you do not become a victim as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so if he was thinking, okay, I got to do this slow. I can't get the bends. I can't,
Can't
whereas Wade Singleton, right, is his name?
Yeah.
Who was a very experienced diver, was confident in his skill to be able to make that ascent in an emergency situation. Dangerous, sure, but was more confident in his ability, and frankly probably had done this dive a million times and knew where he was.
Yeah.
Right? Because Gabe probably also was like, I don't know where I am. I don't know where anybody is. I can't get lost in the ocean if I just flail around and go someplace. And again, I don't necessarily want to defend it, but I do want to say that it's totally possible that in his brain he was like, okay, I have to preserve my own life.
Well, and there was
stay calm.
There was, by the way, the fact that he did take a small break from his ascent to talk to the Asian divers on the line
at the access point.
The access line.
So that probably added to his time up. That
added to his time up as well. He actually entered the water. He went out there in the boat with him, but he might have. They went in like a little less than 10 minutes before the whole disaster happened. Wade might have just actually entered the water just a minute before, and then swimming down the boat and sees her, gets her up. If you've only been underwater for a minute or two, then it's not nearly as serious as if you've been under a longer period of time.
Right.
Correct.
The longer you're underwater, so maybe that's what.
And
happened.
again, Gabe may have been inexperienced enough to not even be thinking about that, to be thinking like, oh, I've been under for, I need a lot of time to decompress, versus Wade, again, who is experienced and would have known my risk for my own personal injury is very low.
Yeah, and I'm sure when they probably teach you in dive school, they probably
you err towards
scenario.
Caution.
Totally.
Yeah.
And totally. And so Wade probably with experience knew that he could really push the envelope a lot.
So any other...
No, that's about it. I've got to say, though, that there's been some... we talked about the battery malfunction. I don't think that really counts. Dr. Stutz, there was an interesting webpage out there that I mentioned already. This guy actually looked at all the various data from dive computers, etc., found out when Dr. Stutz actually entered the water. Turns out that by the time he entered the water, Gabe was already kind of starting his way up from Tina.
So there was no way.
So there was actually no way. If the guy saw anybody bear hugging anybody, he might have seen Wade bringing Tina up off the floor of the ocean. Maybe that's what he saw, but he could not actually see the bear hug if it was Gabe and Tina. But nonetheless, his testimony was accepted in court. But it looks to me like it's kind of questionable. The slow will be unable to dive fast. Well, we'll talk about that. That is kind of inexplicable. But I don't think he murdered her because, and here's why. Number one, he didn't really have a strong motive that I can see.
No.
Unless his motive was, well, he wanted to go, have his wife die on their honeymoon tragically so he can get a lot of sympathy and maybe write a book about it or maybe a movie or something like that. Although
that's a long game.
That's not
good.
That's very, very likely to backfire on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. That's the reason I really don't think he murdered her, besides the lack of motive, is that if he truly had killed her, then it would have made no sense for him to abandon her body in the water the way he did.
No.
Because he should have brought her up. You got to remember, the official theory
that would make him the hero for at least doing his job as a dive buddy.
Instead of making him look like, well, basically, it didn't make him look too good that he abandoned her. Not at all. And remember, the official theory of the prosecution is that Gabe shut off her air supply. and held her under until she drowned.
And
so,
just a quick thing, just for
Yeah.
anybody who doesn't know, that I've thought about this, and I know somebody's going to ask, well, couldn't you have just kinked the air hose, like you do with the garden hose? But you can't. Those hoses are super dense.
no, they're
Air cannot
They're
hold
made
them.
to not do that.
Yes.
yeah. This is, I wonder why.
Because it's kind of important they don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he could have grabbed the regulator out of her mouth or the respirator and just pulled it away from her and just like not giving it back, and she would have drowned maybe. But nonetheless, no matter how you cut it, if he deliberately murdered her by drowning her, then there's no reason not to bring her up.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
already got her.
She's already dead.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not going to like squeal or anything like that. It certainly would have made him look better, a lot better, because abandoning your dive buddy is a huge deal. I mean, Wade Singleton said, remember him, said that he thought that Gabe should have been prosecuted for that alone, just abandoning her, even if he didn't kill her. She should have been prosecuted for that. And so, yeah.
All right, so that's theory
why,
number one.
So that's why I don't believe that murder is the correct theory here.
I agree.
I don't think that Gabe actually was the honeymoon killer.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so the next theory, of course, is that it was all an accident. Gabe was pretty much telling the truth. So Tina loses it, which is entirely possible. Not the first time it's happened.
She's a total novice.
And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If she had just remained calm, I bet things would have been just fine. And
So, one thing about Tina that we haven't talked about is in the paperwork that she had to fill out with the dive company, it said, "Do you have any heart conditions?"
Yeah.
And she said no, which was a lie. She did.
She did have an arrhythmia that had been corrected with surgery, I think, just a couple of years before.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's something that they would not be too comfortable with and would have put her under even more scrutiny. They might not have let her dive.
Yeah, maybe not.
Is the way that I understood it. So the fact that she ignored it makes me think that she may have brought some of it on herself.
Could be. I mean, the cause of death was officially drowning. There was no evidence of any sort of heart attack or anything like that. But you never know. I mean, maybe her arrhythmia kicked in again or something
Caused
like
a
that.
panic
because,
attack.
Because of, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it would have been more of a panic attack, which, if she had a heart condition, may have made it even worse in her mind. Oh God, I'm having a heart attack, and she's freaking out and
Starts to panic.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that she's got air, she's got a regulator in her mouth, but if she's freaking out and she starts yelling, that's when all the water gets
Yeah.
in, and that's why she would drown.
Or if she hyperventilates and sort of kind of passes out. Whoops.
Yeah.
That'll do it. Yeah. So again, if she had just been a little calmer about things, it probably would have been good. I think Gabe.
And that's not a judge. I know that the way you said that is not a judgment on any way on Tina.
Oh, no.
Just so anybody listening to it, sometimes the
It's
way
a-
we say these things get misperceived. So
Yeah,
just saying.
it's a very scary alien environment.
It's super scary. I was
Yeah.
just remembering that I've never been scuba diving or even snorkeling really because I don't like water in my face. But no,
fine,
it's fine.
yeah.
I don't.
That's why she never showers.
True. But I remember watching the videos for the Ben McDaniels thing, and even just watching the YouTube videos, and it was a little unsettling.
Too much.
Yeah, that was too much.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like
Yeah.
the whole underwater thing, but that's just me, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but even I've done the snorkeling and I've done other fun stuff in the water, but I'm not sure what would happen if I was down there 50 feet. Maybe I would lose it too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But and similarly, you don't know what you would do if your dive partner were doing that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, or what I would do if my dive partner put me in a bear hug and shut off my air. Oh, what am I saying? Yeah.
So we pretty much agree it was not just an accident the way that Gabe.
Well, it could have been an accident. I mean, so Gabe.
think
But
was.
not the way that Gabe represented it.
I actually think that it may very well have been exactly the way he represented it. It is just that they were both handling the situation.
Yeah.
That they literally, their combined actions was her cause of death.
I think
Got
so, because they didn't need to fight the current to try to get back to the access point. They could have just gone straight up.
Because
But,
how long is it? What's the distance from access point to access point, Joe? It's
about 110 meters. And
yeah, so it's not a huge, especially when you're already in a moving current.
Yeah, they could have actually. It might have been faster to just swim downstream. Instead
I
of trying
would,
to swim
yeah.
back up
And easier.
Yeah. Or the alternative is just go straight up.
Yeah,
Go straight
ascend.
up. But and so that might have compounded the situation by trying to go back there again.
And just to pause here for a second to talk about the fact that everyone's like, oh, Gabe was super domineering, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like he just was like, yeah, okay, Tina, we're going to do what you want to do. You know, in a situation where you're kind of a jerk, super domineering, aren't you going to be, no, this is the right way?
That's right.
You're
no,
not going to say, okay, I am
your man. We will do as I say.
You know, you're not going to say, I mean, it sounds like kind of what he was thinking was, all right, what she wants to do is going to be the best way to calm her. We're going to do what she wants to do. Let's go do this.
That's
even though he may or may not have known it was the wrong call.
Yeah.
It sounds like
he might have
knew.
also considered that to be the right call.
You got to remember too that at this point, I mean, he might not have even been aware that this is a total life and death situation.
Probably
he might have just thought, well, she's wigging out a little bit. We're going to get her back to the line. Once she gets her hand on the line, she'll calm down and she'll relax, you know. And that he's probably, at least initially, it's possible that he thought, hey, she'll be fine. We'll just get her back to the line and she'll settle down.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out that way.
No.
So I would not say that this is totally beyond the realm of possibility. But there's one more theory.
I like the theory.
You like this theory? Which is that Gabe did not murder her. It was an accident, but he's also not quite telling the truth about the whole thing.
All right. So show me what you got here.
Yeah, it's statements to the police, which I read. I read his entire, well, not everything. I read his entire October 23rd statement. There's a transcript out there. I sent you guys a link to that. Did you guys read that?
Some.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there, and it's hard to read. You know, and not because I'm semi-literate or anything like that, but just because of the way it's been transcribed and the way he speaks doesn't really translate to the written page very well. I'm told that the video of it is actually much, much better for understanding what he's saying.
Okay.
And there are transcription errors as well, which doesn't help. But his statements to the police indicate that he thought that Tina was experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety and maybe even panic. But what if it wasn't her that lost it? What if it was Gabe who lost it? And so what if Tina didn't actually knock his mask and respirator off of his face? What if he panicked and knocked hers off of her face and she drowned? What if that happened?
Oh, like he clocked her in the head and she was semi-conscious and therefore drowned because of that?
And it might be that, and I'm not no casting aspersions on anybody can again lose it and just panic a little bit and cause something like this accidentally and maybe not want to fess up to it.
So you're saying something to the effect of he freaks out, he accidentally swings and clobbers her in the head, and that's what then starts the whole drowning?
Clobbers her in the head, knocks her mask and respirator off of her face.
But her mask and her mask was in place, wasn't it?
Yeah, you could have gotten it back into place.
Okay.
Her mask and respirator were in place. Yeah. But even leaving that aside, he might have panicked also.
Okay.
Well, I guess one question would be then on this theory is why was it that her oxygen consumption was so much higher, and it sounds like his was fairly normal.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a little higher than what an experienced diver would be.
Right, but not. I mean, it sounds like hers was really high.
Kind of, yeah. It was.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, that feeds into the theory that she was the one freaking out and hyperventilating, not him. But
she's breathing shallow and fast. He's breathing deep and hard.
Yeah, but
instead of calm and even.
Yeah. But when you look at it this way, if you think that Gabe actually had a panic attack, and even if he didn't knock the mask off her face, if he was the one who was really panicking, or maybe they both were panicking, one of the things, one of the anxieties that he said that he had was, well, the current was super strong. Yeah. Which I think is what's the big deal. They're on drift dive where they just have to drift down the length of the boat. Yeah. And he also was talking about to the police again, said, well, they lost sight of the entry rope on the bow, and he knew that there was an exit line on the stern of the ship, but that was, as far as he was concerned, that was 100 miles away.
Meters.
That was, well, but as far as
miles. Got it.
But
sorry.
Yeah, it was 100 meters away maybe, but obviously it wasn't visible. It wouldn't be visible for a while. He expressed some anxiety about not being able to see it and maybe missing it and being swept out to sea. So I don't think this is a rational concern personally. I mean, it is in a sense, but at the same time, it'd actually be very easy to find that thing. All you got to do is stay over the ship. On that day, the current was not parallel to the ship. It was actually about 10 degrees off, according to what I have heard. So if you stayed at the same point, you entered right on the bow, stayed in that same exact point without moving a muscle, you would be blown off course enough that you probably would miss that line. Because by my back-of-the-envelope calculations, you would have missed it by about 17 meters. Which is just beyond the realm. Maybe they would have seen it, maybe not. But of course, at the same time, you know what to do. There's a huge ship underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is kick your fins a little bit and get back over the ship, the center line of the ship, and boom, you're lined up for your exit line.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like an irrational, and again, there's no way underwater, there's no way that